Blood hits the bench before anyone can scream. A white cop's fist connects with a black judge's face in open court cameras rolling justice itself under attack. Her name is Ayanna Williams. His name is Jonathan Bryant. And what happens in the next 60 seconds will expose a rot so deep it will take a nation to dig it out. This is the story of one punch that shattered everything we pretend to believe about law and order. Stay with me until the end. This gets darker, deeper, and more real than you think. Drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this truth travels. The morning started like any other Tuesday in Fulton County Superior Court, Atlanta, Georgia. The kind of humid southern heat that makes your shirt stick to your back before you even leave the house. Judge Ayanna Williams arrived at 7:43 a.m., 17 minutes earlier than usual. She always came early on case-heavy days. It gave her time to center herself, to remember why she'd fought so hard to sit behind that bench. Her chambers smelled like old books and fresh coffee. The kind of smell that should mean safety, should mean order. It didn't. Not today. "Morning, Judge?" Lena Rodriguez, her 26-year-old clerk, poked her head through the doorway. Bright-eyed, always too cheerful for the darkness they waded through daily. "Your 9 o'clock got bumped. Officer Bryant's hearing moved up to 8:30. Ayanna's hand paused over her coffee mug. "Jonathan Bryant." "Yeah, the Decatur case. Excessive force allegations." Ayanna felt something cold settle in her stomach. She'd read the file 3 times yesterday. Read it until the words blurred. Jonathan Bryant, 15-year veteran of the Atlanta PD. 6 excessive force complaints. 2 civil lawsuits settled quietly. 0 disciplinary actions on record. The pattern was clear to anyone willing to see it. "He's bringing representation?" Ayanna asked. "Police union lawyer. And?" Lena hesitated. "The deputy chief is in the gallery." Of course he was. They always showed up when one of their own faced real consequences. A show of solidarity, a quiet threat. Ayanna straightened her robe. "Then we'd better not keep them waiting." The courtroom was already packed when she entered. Court Officer Marcus, not to be confused with the ADA she'd known since law school, called out, "All rise for the Honorable Judge Ayanna Williams." The sound of shuffling feet, some respectful, some reluctant. Ayanna took her seat, looking out over the room. Front row left side, Jonathan Bryant sat with his lawyer, Mitchell Carver, a man whose face had appeared in too many police brutality defense cases. Bryant wore his dress blues medals gleaming. His jaw was set hard, eyes forward. The picture of discipline. Behind him, a wall of blue. Off-duty officers' union reps, the deputy chief with his arms crossed. A fortress of fraternity. Front row right side, Marcus Davis, a 19-year-old black kid with his arm still in a sling. His mother beside him clutching a worn Bible. Their lawyer, a young black woman from the public defender's office, looked like she hadn't slept in days. Ayanna had seen this configuration 100 times. The powerful on one side, the powerless on the other, and her in the middle, supposed to be the scale that balanced it all. "Mr. Carver," Ayanna began, her voice steady. "Your client is here for a preliminary hearing regarding allegations of assault and battery during an arrest on July 19th. How does Officer Bryant plead?" Carver stood buttoning his suit jacket with practiced ease. "Not guilty, Your Honor. Furthermore, we move to dismiss based on qualified immunity. Officer Bryant was acting within the scope of his duties." Scope. The word came from Marcus Davis's mother. She was on her feet before anyone could stop her. "Your scope put my baby in the hospital for 3 days." The gavel came down. "Ma'am, please sit down. You'll have your chance to speak." But Mrs. Davis wasn't sitting. Her voice cracked with months of compressed rage. "He was walking home from work, walking, and your officer broke his arm in 2 places because he looked suspicious." Order. Ayanna's voice cut through the noise. "Mrs. Davis, I understand your pain, but outbursts won't help your son's case. Please, sit down." The older woman sank back trembling. Her son put his good arm around her. Ayanna turned back to Carver. Qualified immunity doesn't apply when excessive force is clear and egregious. The evidence presented shows Officer Bryant struck Mr. Davis 7 times after he was already restrained, and "Objection!" Carver's voice boomed. The video evidence is inconclusive, and Officer Bryant's account. The video shows your client punching a handcuffed teenager. Ayanna's words came out sharper than she intended. She reined it in. I've reviewed the footage frame by frame, Mr. Carver. Your client's account doesn't match reality. A murmur rippled through the blue wall. She felt their eyes on her, judging, calculating. Bryant's jaw tightened. She saw his hands grip the table edge. Your Honor, Carver said, his tone shifting to something oily patronizing. With all due respect, perhaps Your Honor's perspective on these matters might benefit from understanding the split-second decisions officers must make in the field. Are you suggesting, Ayanna interrupted, that my perspective as a black woman makes me unable to assess evidence objectively? The courtroom went silent. Carver's face flushed. That's not what because that's what it sounded like. Ayanna leaned forward. And for the record, Counselor, I spent 5 years as a prosecutor before I took this bench. I've worked hundreds of police cases. I know exactly what split-second decisions look like. This wasn't one of them. Bryant stood up. Just stood, no request, no permission. Officer Bryant, Ayanna said firmly. Sit down. He didn't move. His eyes locked on hers, and she saw something flicker there. Something ugly and old. Officer Bryant, sit down now, or I'll hold you in contempt. You don't know what you're talking about. His voice was low, vibrating with barely controlled rage. You sit up there in your robe, never had to deal with these people on the street. These people, Ayanna's voice went cold. Clarify that for the record, officer. The deputies were moving now, approaching Bryant from either side. You think you're special. Bryant's voice rose. You think that robe makes you different. You're just another... He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Everyone in the room knew what word hung in the air. Officer Bryant, you are in contempt of court. Deputies, please. That's when everything shattered. Bryant moved faster than anyone expected from a man his size. He lunged forward, vaulting the barrier between counsel table and bench. The deputies grabbed for him but caught only air. Ayanna saw it coming, had 1 second to process what was happening. 1 second to understand that all the rules, all the decorum, all the supposed sanctity of the court meant nothing to a man who'd never been told no in his entire career. His fist connected with her left cheekbone. The sound was wet and sharp, like a watermelon cracking. Time fragmented, she felt herself falling backward, the chair tipping, the world tilting at a crazy angle. Her head hit the wood paneling behind the bench. Stars exploded across her vision. Screaming, so much screaming. Through the haze of pain, Ayanna heard, "Oh my God! He hit the judge! Get him off! Somebody call!" She tasted copper. Blood running from her nose, her mouth. The overhead lights seemed too bright, burning into her retinas. Her face was on fire, a deep throbbing agony that pulsed with her heartbeat. Move. Get up. Don't let them see you down. The thoughts came from somewhere primal, somewhere that remembered every time she'd been told she didn't belong. Every law school class where she was the only black woman. Every partnership meeting where her voice got talked over. Every judicial appointment hearing where senators questioned her temperament. Ayanna put her hand on the bench and pulled herself up. The courtroom swam into focus. Deputies had Bryant on the ground now, 4 of them struggling to restrain him as he thrashed and shouted. Her blood stained his knuckles. The bailiff was on the phone, probably calling for backup for EMTs. Court Officer Marcus stood frozen, his face pale with shock. The gallery was chaos. Mrs. Davis sobbing, lawyers shouting, officers torn between helping their colleague and maintaining some appearance of professionalism. The cameras that recorded every proceeding were still rolling, red lights blinking, recording everything. Ayanna stood fully. Blood dripped from her chin onto her robe, dark spots spreading across black fabric. Her left eye was already swelling shut. When she spoke, her voice came out thick through split lips. "Everyone, sit down." The chaos didn't stop. "I said sit down." The roar came from somewhere deep, somewhere that had been quiet too long. The kind of voice that carried the weight of every ancestor who'd fought for the right to be heard. The room fell silent, every eye on her. The bloodied judge, the woman still standing. "Court Officer Marcus," she said, forcing her words clear despite the swelling. "Handcuff Officer Bryant. He is under arrest for assault on a judicial officer, contempt of court, and whatever other charges the DA wants to add." "Your Honor, you need medical," Marcus started. Did I stutter? "No, ma'am." "Then do it." The deputies hauled Bryant to his feet. He was still struggling, still shouting, "You can't do this. You don't have the authority. I'm a police officer." Ayanna wiped blood from her mouth with the back of her hand. "You were a police officer. Now you're just another defendant who assaulted a judge in open court. And Officer Bryant..." She locked eyes with him. "Keep the cameras rolling. I want everyone to see this." Bryant's face contorted with rage. "You think this is over. You think you're safe. You have no idea. Get him out of my courtroom." As they dragged him toward the door, Bryant twisted back, his voice rising to a scream. "You're dead. You hear me? Dead. They're going to destroy you. You and that little girl of yours." The threat hung in the air like poison. Ayanna's blood went cold. Zara. He'd just threatened Zara. Her 10-year-old daughter who loved science class and basketball and thought her mom was a superhero. Her baby girl who didn't know yet how cruel the world could be. "Add terroristic threats to the charges," Ayanna said, her voice like ice. "And I want him held without bond. Deputy Chief?" She turned to the senior officer still sitting in the gallery, face unreadable. "I trust you'll ensure your former officer is treated exactly as he treated others, by the book, every single page." The deputy chief stood slowly. His eyes met hers, not with sympathy, not with support, but with something colder. A calculation. "Your Honor," he said carefully, "I'm sure we can resolve this misunderstanding." Misunderstanding. Ayanna gestured to her face, blood still running. "Do I look misunderstood to you, Chief? Your officer just committed multiple felonies on camera, in front of 50 witnesses. There's no misunderstanding here, only consequences." The chief's jaw tightened. "With all due respect..." "No." Ayanna cut him off. "You don't get to, with all due respect, your way out of this. One of your officers just attacked a sitting judge in open court, if you can't acknowledge that you're part of the problem." The silence that followed was thick with tension. She could feel it, the line being drawn in real time. Whose side everyone was on. Who would stand with justice, and who would close ranks. "Court is in recess," Ayanna announced. "Emergency session will convene tomorrow at 9 a.m. to address this matter and the original case. Everyone out, now." The room cleared slowly. Officers helping Bryant exit, though she noticed several casting dark looks her way. Mrs. Davis approached the bench, tears streaming. "Judge Williams, I thank you. Thank you for..." "Don't thank me yet, Mrs. Davis," Ayanna said quietly. "This is about to get much worse before it gets better. Go home. Stay with family if you can. And whatever you do, don't talk to the press until you speak with your lawyer." The older woman nodded, understanding passing between them. They both knew how this worked, how the machine would respond to being challenged. As the courtroom emptied, Lena rushed up with paper towels and her phone. "Judge, the EMTs are on their way, and oh God, your face. Are you okay? That was... I've never seen anything." "Lena." Ayanna took the paper towels, pressing them to her still bleeding nose. "I need you to do something for me. Anything. Make copies of everything. The courtroom footage, Bryant's file, every complaint, every case. Make copies and put them somewhere safe, somewhere off-site." Lena's eyes widened. "You think they'll try to..." "I don't think. I know." Ayanna gripped her clerk's arm. "They're going to try to bury this. Bury me. So we need insurance. Can you do that? Yes, absolutely. Good. And Lena? Tell no one. Not your boyfriend, not your mom, not your priest. No one. The younger woman nodded, fear and determination warring on her face. The EMTs arrived minutes later. They wanted to take her to the hospital, possible concussion, definitely needed stitches, x-rays to check for fractures. Ayanna refused. Just patch me up here. I have work to do. Ma'am, you really should. I know what I should do. I've had worse. It wasn't quite true, but she said it with enough conviction that they didn't argue further. While they cleaned and bandaged her face, Ayanna pulled out her phone. 17 missed calls. 34 text messages. The news had already spread. One text made her blood run colder than the ice pack pressed to her eye. Unknown number. That was a warning. Drop Bryant's case, and nothing happens to you or yours. Push forward, and we'll bury you so deep nobody will remember your name. We're watching, always watching. She deleted it immediately, then thought better and recovered it, taking a screenshot. Evidence. Everything was evidence now. Another text, this one from her best friend and fellow judge Marcus Hale. Yes, the ADA Marcus, not the court officer. Ayanna. What the hell happened? Are you okay? I'm coming over, she typed back. Don't. Stay away. This is going to get messy. His response came instantly. That's exactly why I'm coming. She didn't bother arguing. Marcus Hale had been her friend since law school, one of the few people in the legal system she still trusted completely. If this was going to be a war, she'd need allies. By the time the EMTs finished and left, it was nearly noon. The courthouse had that eerie emptiness that only comes after violence, like the building itself was holding its breath. Ayanna sat alone in her chambers, staring at her reflection in the window glass. Her face was a horror show of bruises and bandages. One eye swollen completely shut, the other bloodshot. Butterfly stitches across her left cheekbone. Her bottom lip split and puffy. She looked like a victim. She refused to be one. Her phone buzzed. A call from Chancellor Hayes, Chief Judge of the Superior Court. Her boss technically, though judges like to pretend they had no bosses. Ayanna. His voice was careful, measured. I heard what happened. How are you? I've been better, Chancellor. I'm sure. Listen, I think for your own safety and the integrity of the court, we should perhaps assign the Bryant case to another judge. Let you take time to recover and... No. I'm sorry. No. Ayanna repeated harder this time. I'm not recusing myself. Bryant attacked me in my courtroom. If I step away now, what message does that send? That judges can be intimidated. That violence works. Ayanna, be reasonable. Your objectivity is compromised. My face is compromised, Chancellor. My objectivity is fine. She stood pacing her small office despite the headache pounding behind her eyes. I know what you're doing. I know the calls you're getting, but I'm not stepping aside. A long pause. The optics. Optics. Ayanna laughed and it hurt. A cop punched a judge on camera. Those are your optics. You want to worry about something. Worry about what it looks like if we don't hold him accountable. There will be an investigation, obviously. Internal affairs, maybe even federal, which will take months, years maybe. You know how this works, how long cases drag out when they want them to disappear. Her voice dropped. I'm not letting this disappear, Chancellor. Not this time. Another pause, longer this time. When Hayes spoke again, his tone had shifted. Colder. Judge Williams, I'm strongly advising you to recuse yourself. For your own good. There it was. The threat wrapped in concern. Noted, Ayanna said. Now if you'll excuse me, I have a docket to review. She hung up before he could respond. Her hands were shaking. From adrenaline, from fear, from rage, she couldn't tell which. Maybe all three. She sat down hard in her chair, suddenly exhausted. The pain was catching up, the shock wearing off, and underneath it all was the cold reality. She'd just declared war on the most powerful institution in the city, maybe the state. And wars had casualties. A knock at her door. "Judge, it's me." Marcus Hale entered without waiting for permission. He took one look at her face and stopped dead. "Jesus Christ, Ayanna!" "It looks worse than it feels." Another lie. Marcus crossed to her in 3 strides, pulling her into a careful hug. They'd known each other 15 years, had studied for the bar together, celebrated each other's victories, mourned each other's losses. He was one of the few people allowed to see behind the judge's mask. "What do you need?" he asked simply. "Honestly, I don't know yet." She pulled back, gesturing to her face. This wasn't just rage, Marcus. This was calculated. He knew exactly what he was doing. "And that text I got after—" "What text?" she showed him. Watched his face darken as he read. "Ayanna, this is a credible threat. You need to report this, get protection." "From who? The police?" She laughed bitterly. "They're the ones making the threats." "Not all of them. Enough of them." She moved to the window, looking out at the Atlanta skyline. "You know what the worst part is? This isn't new. Bryant's been doing this for years, to people who couldn't fight back, who wouldn't be believed, and the system, our system, protected him every single time." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "What are you going to do?" "My job." She turned back to face him. "I'm going to try the case, let the evidence speak, and hand down a verdict based on law, not fear. They'll come after you, you know that. Let them try." But even as she said it, she thought of Zara, her baby, the most precious thing in her world. And Bryant's threat echoed in her mind. "You and that little girl of yours." "I need to call my sister," Ayanna said suddenly. "Zara's at school. I need to—" "Already done," Marcus said gently. "I called Shanice on the way over. She's picking Zara up early, taking her to her place for a few days. Told the school only she and you are authorized for pickup until further notice." Ayanna felt tears sting her eyes, the first since it happened. "Thank you. We're family, Aya. You don't thank family." The rest of the day blurred. Statements to Internal Affairs. Questions from the FBI federal charges would likely apply given she was a federal judge. Calls from reporters she refused to answer. Her phone eventually died, and she was grateful for the silence. By the time she made it home that evening, every inch of her body hurt. The adrenaline had worn off completely, leaving only pain and exhaustion. Her house felt too big, too empty, without Zara's energy filling it. No backpack dumped by the door, no sneakers kicked off in the hallway, no excited chatter about her day. Ayanna stood in the kitchen, staring at the refrigerator covered in Zara's drawings and test papers, mostly A's, 1 B+ in English, that had devastated her perfectionist daughter. Photos held up by magnets. Zara's basketball team last year's science fair, where she'd won 2nd place, the 2 of them at Disney World, grinning like fools. Her daughter's whole bright future, and she'd just painted a target on both their backs. The doubts crept in then, in the quiet and the dark. Had she done the right thing? Should she have just recused herself, let someone else handle it, kept her head down and her child safe? No. The answer came swift and certain. Because if not her, then who? How many other mothers like Mrs. Davis had watched their children brutalized and known no one would care? How many people had Bryant hurt over the years while the system looked away? Someone had to stand. Even if that someone stood alone. Ayanna poured a glass of wine she wouldn't drink, ran a bath she wouldn't take, and instead sat on her couch in the dark, phone, finally charged and buzzing with messages she couldn't answer. One caught her eye. From Lena Judge, the footage is secured. Multiple locations. Also, you're trending on Twitter. #Justice Ayanna. People are watching. You're not alone. She opened Twitter against her better judgment. And there it was, the courtroom footage shared thousands of times. Her face as Bryant's fist connected. The blood. Her standing back up. Her voice cutting through chaos. Keep the cameras rolling. The comments were mixed. Supportive, vicious, everything in between. She's a hero. This is what happens when you disrespect the police. AKA every single one. She should have stayed down. Finally, someone stood up. Race-baiting judge got what she deserved. The ugliness was expected. But the support, the sheer volume of people saying, "We see you, we believe you, we stand with you," that was unexpected. Maybe she wasn't as alone as she thought. Ayanna closed Twitter and opened her photos instead. Scrolled to her favorite picture of Zara, taken last month at her birthday party. Chocolate cake smeared on her face. Laughing so hard her eyes were squeezed shut. Pure joy. Pure innocence. "I'm sorry, baby," Ayanna whispered to the photo. "I'm sorry for what's coming. But I won't teach you that staying silent is survival. I'd rather show you how to stand." The city outside her window hummed with nighttime traffic, with life continuing on, unaware or uncaring that something had shifted today. That a line had been crossed, and there was no going back. Judge Ayanna Williams sat in her dark living room, face throbbing, future uncertain, and made a choice. She would see this through, whatever it cost. Sleep never came that night. Ayanna lay in bed, watching shadows move across her ceiling, every creak of the house sending her heart racing. At 3:47 a.m., she finally gave up, padding downstairs to make coffee she didn't need. The bruises had deepened overnight, purple and yellow, spreading across her cheekbone like spilled ink. Looking in the bathroom mirror felt like staring at a stranger. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A text from Shanice at this ungodly hour. "Zara's asking questions. What do I tell her?" Ayanna's fingers hovered over the keyboard. What could she say? That mommy got punched because she did her job. That the people who were supposed to protect everyone sometimes protected no one but themselves. Tell her I'm fine. Tell her I love her. I'll call in the morning. She didn't mention that she'd barely slept, that every sound made her think someone was breaking in, that Bryant's words kept echoing. "You and that little girl of yours." The coffee tasted like ash, but she drank it anyway. Needed the caffeine. Needed something to do with her hands. The house felt like it was closing in every window, a potential eye watching her every shadow, a threat. By 6:00 a.m., the morning news had picked up the story. Ayanna turned on the television to find her own bloodied face staring back at her. The footage played on loop, Bryant charging the punch, connecting her standing back up. The anchors debated in split screens. Clear case of assault on a judicial officer. But we have to consider the pressure police are under in today's climate. Are you seriously defending what we all just watched? I'm saying context matters. Ayanna muted it. Context. They always wanted context when it was one of their own. But where was the context for Marcus Davis, a teenager walking home from his shift at Wendy's? Where was the context for all the others Bryant had brutalized over 15 years? She was pulling on her work clothes, moving slowly. Everything hurt when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Judge Williams?" A woman's voice. Young, nervous. "My name is Keisha Grant. I don't know if I should be calling you. But I saw what happened yesterday, and A shaky breath. "Officer Bryant arrested me 2 years ago. Ms. Grant," Ayanna interrupted gently. "Are you safe right now? Where are you calling from?" "My apartment. I'm safe. Nobody believed me when I reported what he did. They said I was lying, trying to get out of charges. But you stood up to him. And I thought maybe, what did he do to you?" The silence stretched long enough that Ayanna thought the connection had dropped. Then, "He pulled me over for a broken taillight. I wasn't being difficult, I swear. I had my license ready, hands on the wheel, everything by the book, because my daddy taught me how to survive traffic stops." Her voice cracked. "But Bryant said I was resisting. Dragged me out of the car, slammed my face into the hood. My cheekbone shattered. I had surgery, metal plates." A sob. "And when I filed a complaint, they investigated him, not me. Lost my job because I couldn't work while recovering. Lost my apartment. Everything. Ayanna's free hand clenched into a fist. Ms. Grant, I need you to document everything. Every hospital record, every police report, every witness. And I need you to call the FBI field office. They're investigating Bryant now. Your testimony could... I'm scared. The words came out small. Judge, I'm scared. Look what he did to you. You're a judge, and he still... I know, I'm scared too. The admission felt dangerous but necessary. But fear is how they win, how they've always won. We can be scared and still do the right thing. After Keisha hung up promising to contact the FBI, though Ayanna wasn't sure she actually would, the calls kept coming. 3 more victims within the hour. A college student Bryant had beaten during a wellness check. A homeless veteran he'd arrested for sleeping on a bench then accidentally dropped down the precinct stairs. A nurse who'd witnessed Bryant plant evidence on a suspect and faced retaliation when she tried to report it. 15 years of violence, and she was only hearing about it now because she'd been visible enough, important enough for people to believe her attack had really happened. How many others had suffered in silence? Ayanna arrived at the courthouse at 7:30 a.m. earlier than even her usual early. The parking lot was already packed, news vans everywhere, reporters setting up shots, photographers with cameras that looked like small cannons. She sat in her car for a full minute, steeling herself. The moment she opened her door, they swarmed. Judge Williams. Judge Williams. How do you feel about Judge? Are you pressing charges? Some people are saying you provoked Officer Bryant. Judge Williams, there are reports that you have a history of bias against police. That one stopped her. She turned toward the voice, a blonde reporter from a conservative news network, microphone extended like a weapon. Excuse me. Sources say you've ruled against police officers in several cases. I've ruled according to the law and evidence. Ayanna said, her voice cold. If that constitutes bias in your view, I suggest you examine your own assumptions about justice. She pushed through the crowd, ignoring the shouted questions, the cameras tracking her every step. The courthouse security had been doubled, she noticed that immediately. Officers she didn't recognize, faces hard and unwelcoming. One of them stopped her at the metal detector. ID. She'd been coming through this entrance for 3 years. Everyone knew who she was, but she pulled out her credentials anyway, holding them up. The officer name tag read Dawson, examined them with exaggerated care, took his time, made her wait while people backed up behind her. Finally, grudgingly, go ahead. The message was clear. No special treatment. No respect. You're on your own. Lena was already in chambers, looking like she hadn't slept either. Dark circles under her eyes, hands wrapped around a coffee mug, like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Morning, Judge. How are you? She stopped when she saw Ayanna's face in full light. Oh my God, it looks even worse today. Thanks for the honesty. Ayanna managed a weak smile. Did you? Everything's backed up. 3 locations. Cloud storage under fake names, physical drives hidden at my parents' house, and my boyfriend's apartment. Nobody can touch it without me knowing. Relief flooded through Ayanna. Good. That's good. Because I have a feeling. A knock interrupted her. Chancellor Hayes entered without waiting for permission, his face grave. Ayanna, my office, now. It wasn't a request. She followed him down the hallway, aware of eyes tracking their progress. The Chancellor's office was larger than hers. Wood-paneled walls, leather chairs, degrees from Harvard and Yale displayed prominently. He gestured to a seat. She remained standing. I'll make this brief, Hayes said, moving behind his desk like it was a shield. The Judicial Standards Commission has received multiple complaints about your conduct in yesterday's hearing. My conduct. Ayanna couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. I was assaulted. Complaints suggest you were antagonistic toward Officer Bryant, that your remarks about his lawyer constituted judicial bias, and that your personal history may have influenced your handling of the case. There it was, the counterattack, They'd spent less than 24 hours crafting a narrative where she was the aggressor. "This is unbelievable," Ayanna said. "A police officer attacked me in open court on camera, and you're investigating me." "It's procedure. You know that. Anytime there's an incident." Incident. She laughed sharp and bitter. "Chancellor, he punched me in the face. That's not an incident. That's assault. And if you can't see the difference, then this entire system is more broken than I thought." Hayes's expression hardened. "Judge Williams, I'm trying to help you. If you cooperate with the investigation, show some contrition." "Contrition for what? Doing my job." "For inflammatory remarks that may have escalated. Don't." Ayanna stepped forward, planting her hands on his desk. "Don't you dare suggest I'm responsible for a man's decision to commit violence. That's the same logic abusers use. Look what you made me do. I won't accept it from a domestic violence defendant, and I sure as hell won't accept it from this institution." Hayes stood as well, his voice dropping to something harder. "You're making this political, Ayanna, and that's a mistake. There are powerful people who don't appreciate judges who make waves, who think you're using this situation to grandstand about racial issues." Racial issues. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. A white cop punched a black judge and threatened her child. How is that not racial? See, that's exactly what I mean. You're injecting race into. I'm not injecting anything. It's there. It's always been there. Her voice rose despite herself. You want me to pretend it's not? Want me to say, gosh, could have happened to anyone? When we both know damn well if I were a white man, Bryant never would have dared. That's speculation. That's reality. Ayanna took a breath, trying to calm down. The pain in her face was flaring up, making it hard to think. Chancellor, what do you want from me? Really? Hayes sat back down, suddenly looking older, tired. I want you to take a leave of absence. Temporary. A few weeks, maybe a month. Let things cool down. The Bryant case will be reassigned. No. Ayanna. No. She straightened. I'm not taking leave. I'm not recusing. And I'm not going to apologize for being attacked. If the Judicial Standards Commission wants to investigate me, fine. They can investigate while I'm still doing my job. You're making a mistake. Maybe. But it's my mistake to make. She left before he could respond, her hands shaking with rage and adrenaline. In the hallway, she nearly collided with Marcus Hale, who grabbed her elbow to steady her. Whoa, you okay? You look mad as hell. That's because I am. She pulled him into an empty conference room, checking to make sure no one was nearby. Marcus, they're coming after me. Filing ethics complaints, trying to force me out. I heard. His face was grim. Ayanna, there's more. I got a call this morning from the DA's office. They're suggesting they might not prosecute Bryant. The words hit like a second punch. What? They're claiming evidentiary issues, saying your injuries aren't severe enough to warrant felony charges, that Bryant's history isn't admissible, that... He ran a hand through his hair. It's bullshit. Complete bullshit. But they're laying groundwork to let him walk. Ayanna felt the room tilt. He assaulted a judge, on camera, in front of 50 witnesses. I know. How can they possibly? Because the system protects its own. You know that. Marcus moved closer, his voice urgent. Ayanna, you need to be prepared. This isn't just about Bryant anymore. It's about power. About who gets to say what justice means, and they're not going to let you redefine it without a fight. She knew he was right, had known from the moment Bryant's fist connected with her face, but hearing it said out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. What do I do? You fight, but smart. You document everything. You build alliances. You... He stopped, pulling out his phone. Shit. What? He turned the screen toward her. A news headline, Judge Williams's bank accounts frozen pending financial investigation. The blood drained from Ayanna's face. They can't. They can. IRS audit allegedly. Someone filed a complaint suggesting you've been accepting bribes, have undisclosed income. That's insane. I've never... I know. But true or not, it'll take weeks to resolve, maybe months. Meanwhile, how are you supposed to pay your mortgage, your daughter's school tuition, your bills? The walls were closing in. Ayanna grabbed the conference table for support, her injured face throbbing in time with her racing heart. This is coordinated. This isn't random. Someone is orchestrating. Yeah, someone is. Marcus's expression was dark. Question is, how high does it go? That afternoon, Ayanna tried to focus on her docket, 3 cases scheduled routine matters that felt absurd in light of everything else. But she couldn't access her usual files. Her login credentials didn't work. When she called IT, they claimed there was a system-wide security review, and her access had been temporarily suspended. Temporarily. That word again. As if anything about this was temporary. Judge, Lena poked her head in. There's someone here to see you. Says it's urgent. A Detective Sarah Chen from Internal Affairs. Ayanna's stomach dropped, but she nodded. Send her in. Detective Chen was younger than expected, mid-30s maybe, with sharp eyes and an expression that gave away nothing. She flashed a badge and settled into the chair across from Ayanna's desk without being invited. Judge Williams, I'm investigating the incident from yesterday. I need to ask you some questions. Of course. Ayanna kept her voice neutral, professional. Walk me through what happened, from your perspective. From my perspective. The phrasing was telling. Detective, there's video footage of the entire event. Surely that's more reliable than anyone's perspective. Video can be misleading. I need your account. So Ayanna recounted it. The hearing. The escalating tension, Bryant's refusal to sit down the lunge. The punch. She kept her voice steady, factual, even as her hands clenched under the desk. Chen took notes, her expression unchanging. When Ayanna finished, the detective leaned back. Some witnesses say you were aggressive toward Officer Bryant before the physical altercation, that you made inflammatory statements about his race and the race of his alleged victims. That's not true. I challenged his lawyer's suggestion that my perspective as a black woman made me biased. I addressed evidence. I did my job. Other witnesses contradict that. Which witnesses? I'm not at liberty to say. Of course not. Ayanna felt anger rising, but pushed it down. Detective Chen, I was the victim of assault. Why does it feel like you're investigating me instead of the man who attacked me? I'm investigating all aspects of the incident. Chen stood, tucking her notebook away. Thank you for your time, Judge Williams. We'll be in touch. After she left, Ayanna sat in silence, a cold certainty settling over her. This wasn't an investigation. It was a setup. They were building a case to discredit her, to paint Bryant as the real victim, provoked by an aggressive, biased judge. Her phone buzzed. Another unknown number. She answered warily. Judge Williams. A man's voice, low and urgent. Don't say my name. I'm calling from a burner phone because they're monitoring everything. I'm a detective with APD. I can't give you specifics, but you need to know there's a file. On you. They've been building it for years. Every decision you've made that went against a cop, every ruling that favored a black defendant, every time you pushed back, it's all there. And they're using it now. Who's they? I can't say. But it's big. Bigger than just Bryant. There's a network, cops, prosecutors, judges. They protect each other. And anyone who threatens that? He trailed off. Watch your back, Judge, and protect your daughter. They know where she goes to school. The line went dead. Ayanna stared at her phone, ice flooding her veins. They know where she goes to school. She dialed Shanice immediately. Aya, what's wrong? Where's Zara right now? Is she with you? Yeah, we're at my place. She's doing homework. Why? What happened? Don't let her out of your sight, not for a second. And God, I hate to ask this, but can you keep her home from school for a few days? Maybe a week. Ayanna, you're scaring me. I'm scared too. Her voice broke. Shanice, they threatened her. Someone knows where she goes to school, and I can't. Hey. Hey, breathe. She's safe here. I promise. Nobody's getting near her. But Aya, how bad is this? I don't know yet, but it's bad. It's really bad. That evening alone again in her too-empty house, Ayanna tried to make sense of everything. Her bank accounts frozen, her computer access suspended, an internal affairs investigation that felt more like a prosecution, anonymous warnings about files and networks and threats to her child. 24 hours. It had been 24 hours since Bryant's fist connected with her face, and they'd already built a cage around her. Her laptop sat on the coffee table. She opened it, intending to do research to find something, anything that might help. The screen loaded slowly, then displayed an error message. Access denied. This device has been remotely locked pending security review. Contact IT for more information. They'd locked her out of her own computer. Ayanna slammed the laptop shut, fury and fear warring inside her. She grabbed her phone instead, scrolling through news sites' social media, trying to understand what was happening outside her immediate world. The story had exploded. Justice. Ayanna was trending nationally now. But so was #SupportBryant. The internet had split into camps, those who saw a hero judge standing up to corruption, and those who saw an aggressive activist using her position to attack law enforcement. The conservative outlets were vicious. Judge with known anti-police bias. Provokes officer claims victim status. Activist judge's judicial record shows pattern of discrimination. Sources Williams has financial irregularities. IRS investigation pending. They'd moved fast, coordinated their message, turned her into the villain before she could even process what was happening. But there were other voices too. We stand with Judge Williams. How many others has Officer Bryant hurt? This is what accountability looks like and why they fear it. A tweet from a prominent civil rights attorney. Judge Ayanna Williams did what the system is designed to prevent. She held power accountable. Now watch how that system destroys her for it. This is the fight of our generation. Her phone rang. Lena. Judge, don't freak out, but there's something you need to know. I was going through the court's video archive to make more backups, and some of the footage is gone. Ayanna's blood turned to ice. What do you mean, gone? The main server files for yesterday's hearing, they've been deleted. Not all of them. The news footage is still out there because it was already broadcast. But the original court recording, the high-quality version that shows everything in detail, it's been wiped. And the backup files, someone corrupted them. Made them look like a technical error. But you made copies. Yeah, and those are safe. But Judge, someone with high-level access did this. Someone inside the court system. They're trying to control the narrative, make it so the only footage available is the low-quality news version that can be disputed. Ayanna closed her eyes. Of course. Of course they were. Evidence that couldn't be questioned was evidence that couldn't be spun. Lena, you need to be careful. If they figure out you have copies. I know, I'm being careful, but Judge... Her voice dropped. I think we should leak them. Upload them everywhere. Make it impossible for them to erase. That's risky, for both of us. Riskier than letting them control the story. Judge, they're going to bury this. Bury you. Unless we make sure the truth is so widespread they can't contain it. Ayanna was quiet, thinking. It was a huge risk. Could be seen as improper as a judge using her position to influence public opinion. Could give the ethics investigation actual ammunition. But Lena was right. If they didn't act, the original footage would disappear, and with it, the clearest evidence of what really happened. Do it, Ayanna said finally. But do it anonymously. Use a VPN, a fake account, cover your tracks. And Lena, thank you for risking yourself like this. You stood up when you could have stayed down. I'm just following your example. 2 hours later, the internet exploded again. The full courtroom footage, every angle perfect quality impossible to dispute, appeared on Twitter, YouTube, Reddit, everywhere. Uploaded by an anonymous account that vanished immediately after posting. Within minutes, it had been downloaded thousands of times. Shared, reposted, preserved. The system had tried to erase the evidence. The internet had refused to let them. Ayanna watched the footage spread, watched the comments pile up, watched the narrative shift in real time. People who'd been skeptical now saw the full context. Bryant's aggression, his refusal to follow court procedures, the calculated nature of his attack. Her response bloodied but steady, demanding accountability. The phone rang again. Marcus. Did you see the footage? I saw. Ayanna, this is good. This is really good. They can't spin this away now. Too many people have seen it, saved it. The truth is out there. For now, she said quietly. But Marcus, I keep thinking about something. That detective who called me, he said there's a network. That this is bigger than Bryant. What if releasing the footage just makes them fight harder? What if they... Her phone buzzed with an incoming text. Unknown number. She opened it and felt her world tilt. It was a photo. Zara. Outside Shanice's apartment building. Today, Ayanna recognized her daughter's outfit. She'd been photographed without them knowing. Below the image, a message. The footage was a mistake. Fix it. Make this go away, or she's next. You have 48 hours. Ayanna's hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the phone. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at her daughter's face captured by someone who'd been watching, waiting. Ayanna, you still there? What's wrong? She couldn't answer. Couldn't form words. Terror had locked her throat shut. They'd found Zara. They'd gotten close enough to photograph her. Close enough to... I have to go, she managed to choke out. I have to... Shanice. She hung up and immediately called her sister, her heart hammering so hard it hurt. Ayanna. What? Lock the doors. Right now. Don't let anyone in. Don't go outside. They found you. They photographed Zara. They... Her voice broke into a sob. God, Shanice, they threatened my baby. Okay. We're locking everything. Zara's right here with me. She's safe. Nobody's getting in. But Aya, you need to call the police. The police are the ones threatening her. The words came out as a scream. Don't you understand? We can't trust anyone. We can't... She forced herself to stop, to breathe, to think, despite the panic clawing at her chest. I'm calling the FBI, she said, her voice steadier. The agents who are investigating Bryant. They'll send protection. Just stay inside until they get there. After she hung up, after she'd made the call to the FBI and been assured that agents were being dispatched immediately, Ayanna sat in her dark living room, her daughter's photo still glowing on her phone screen. 48 hours. They'd given her 48 hours to make this go away, as if she could, as if she would. But the fear was paralyzing, because she knew, had always known, but now felt with brutal clarity that power didn't give itself up willingly. That systems built to protect themselves didn't crumble just because one person stood up and said, no more. They crushed that person instead. Made an example. Ensured no one else would dare. Outside Atlanta hummed with its usual nighttime rhythm. Inside, Ayanna Williams faced the oldest question in the book. How much was she willing to sacrifice for justice? How much could she ask her daughter to sacrifice? She looked at the photo again. Zara's bright smile, unaware she'd been photographed, unaware of the danger surrounding her. 10 years old, and already caught in a war she didn't start. Ayanna thought about backing down, about calling the chancellor, agreeing to recuse herself, to take the leave of absence, to let Bryant's case fade into the bureaucratic machinery that so efficiently ground justice into dust. It would be easier. Safer. But then Zara would grow up learning the same lesson too many people learned, that power always wins. That standing up only gets you hurt. That survival means staying silent. Ayanna couldn't teach her that. Wouldn't teach her that, even if it cost everything. Her phone buzzed one more time. Another unknown number. She almost ignored it, then answered with shaking hands. Judge Williams. A woman's voice, older, steady. My name is Senator Patricia Moore. I've been watching what's happening to you, and I want to help. Ayanna stared at her phone. Senator Moore's words hanging in the silence. Help. The word felt foreign after 48 hours of watching every system she'd believed in turn against her. Why? The question came out raw, suspicious. Senator, I don't even know you. Why would you help me? Because 23 years ago I was a prosecutor in DeKalb County. I tried to bring charges against 3 officers who'd beaten a suspect so badly he lost an eye. The case was airtight, witnesses, medical records, their own body cam footage. But it never made it to trial. Files disappeared, witnesses recanted, and suddenly I was facing an ethics investigation for fabricating evidence. Moore's voice carried the weight of old wounds. I backed down, took a deal, kept my license but lost my spine. I've regretted it every day since. So this is about your guilt. This is about making sure you don't make my mistake. A pause. Judge Williams. I've spent 2 decades in the Senate. I know where the bodies are buried. I know which prosecutors look the other way, which judges are compromised, which politicians take money to protect bad cops. And I'm tired of knowing and doing nothing. Ayanna walked to her window, looking out at the city lights. They threatened my daughter. Photographed her. If I keep pushing, they'll do what they're doing anyway, Moore interrupted. You think backing down will make them leave you alone? You've already seen too much. You're already a threat. The only question is whether you go down fighting or you go down quietly. The brutal honesty hit harder than any threat, because Moore was right. Ayanna had crossed a line the moment she stood up with blood on her face and refused to be broken. There was no going back to safety. There was only forward into whatever darkness waited. What kind of help are you offering? The kind that matters. I have investigators, private, discreet, with no ties to local law enforcement. I can get you protection that isn't compromised. And I can make calls to DOJ, to federal prosecutors who aren't bought. But Judge Williams. Moore's voice hardened. If we do this, we do it all the way. We don't just take down Bryant. We expose everyone protecting him. Every prosecutor who buried complaints, every supervisor who looked away, every politician who took their money. All of it. Ayanna thought of Zara's face in that photo. Thought of Keisha Grant and Marcus Davis and all the other victims whose names she didn't know. Thought of her father. The memory hit her like cold water. She'd been 7 years old. Her father, Marcus Williams, had been stopped by police on his way home from his construction job. She remembered her mother's panic when he didn't come home. Remembered the call from the hospital. He'd resisted arrest, they said. Had a broken arm, 3 cracked ribs, a concussion that left him different. Quieter, more afraid. They'd never filed a complaint. Her mother had been too scared, and her father too broken. The officer's name had been lost to time and childhood memory. Or had it? Senator Ayanna said slowly, an idea forming. These investigators you mentioned, how far back can they dig? As far as necessary. Why? Because I think this might be personal. More personal than I realized. After arranging to meet Moore the next morning, Ayanna called Marcus Hale back. He answered on the first ring. Ayanna, thank God. Are you okay? You hung up so fast? Marcus, I need you to do something for me, something that might cost you your career. A beat of silence. Then, what do you need? Access to old arrest records, specifically from 1998. My father was arrested that year, bogus resisting charge that got dropped, but he was beaten badly during the arrest. I never knew the officer's name. My parents didn't talk about it. You think it was Bryant? I don't know, but if it was... She trailed off, the implications enormous. If Bryant had victimized her father 20 years ago, if that violence had echoed forward to this moment, it would prove this wasn't random rage. It was pattern, system, something far more calculated. That's sealed record access, Marcus said carefully. I'd need a reason, a legal justification. So make one up. Ayanna, I'm serious. They're already investigating me for crimes I didn't commit. They've frozen my bank accounts, locked my computer, threatened my child. At this point, what's one more rule broken if it exposes the truth? She heard him breathing on the other end, weighing risk against conscience. Finally, give me until morning, I'll find a way. But morning felt impossibly far away. Ayanna spent the night jumping at every sound, checking her phone obsessively for updates from Shanice from the FBI agents now stationed outside her sister's apartment. At 2 a.m., she gave up on sleep entirely and went to her home office, the one room they hadn't managed to lock her out of yet. Her father's old papers were in a box in the closet, things her mother had saved after he died of a heart attack 5 years ago. Birth certificate, military discharge papers, union cards. And at the bottom, a thin folder marked legal. Ayanna had never looked through it. Her father had been intensely private about that arrest, had made it clear the subject was closed. But he was gone now, and she needed answers. The folder contained copies of the arrest report, hospital records, and a single photograph of her father in his hospital bed. Ayanna had to sit down when she saw it. His face was so swollen she barely recognized him. Both eyes blackened, jaw visibly misaligned. The arrest report was sparse. Officer J. Bryant had responded to a suspicious person call. Subject became combative. Necessary force was applied. Subject transported to Grady Memorial with minor injuries. J. Bryant. The room spun. Ayanna read the name again, then again, her hands shaking so badly the paper rattled. It couldn't be. It couldn't be the same. But of course it was. 23 years on the force. 15 years of documented complaints. How many more years before that, when he was still learning how to hurt people with impunity? Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, but this one felt different. The message was a single line. Check your personal email. Password is your daughter's middle name. Delete after reading. Ayanna's heart hammered as she opened her laptop, her personal one, not the court-issued device they'd locked. Logged into an email account she barely used, and there, marked urgent, was a message from an anonymous sender with no subject line. The email contained a single attachment. 23 pages of scanned documents. Ayanna opened them and felt the world tilt. They were internal memos from the district attorney's office. Going back years. Dozens of cases involving officer complaints, including multiple against Bryant with handwritten notes in the margins. No probable cause file closed. Witness credibility issues declined to prosecute. Political ramifications too high, refer to internal affairs. Over and over, case after case, the same pattern. Complaints buried, evidence ignored, victims discredited, and at the bottom of several memos a signature she recognized: Marcus Hale. No, not Marcus. Not her friend, her ally, the one person she'd thought she could trust completely. Ayanna's hands trembled as she scrolled through the documents. Some were older, from before Marcus had become ADA, but others were recent, within the last 2 years. Cases he'd personally declined to prosecute, despite clear evidence. Her phone rang. Marcus. She almost didn't answer. Almost blocked the number and pretended she'd never seen what she'd seen. But she needed to know. Needed to hear him explain how the man who'd been her friend for 15 years could be part of this. Marcus. Hey, I know it's early, but I found something. Your dad's arrest record. Ayanna, you were right. It was Bryant. I've got the... I know. Her voice was flat. I found my father's papers. And I found something else too. Tell me, Marcus, When were you planning to mention that you've been burying Bryant's cases for years? The silence that followed was deafening. What are you talking about? Don't. The word came out sharp. Don't lie to me. Not now. I have the memos. Your signature on decisions to decline prosecution on at least 8 cases involving excessive force, including 3 against Bryant specifically. Ayanna, listen to me. No, you listen. I trusted you. I thought you were different. But you're just another part of the machine, aren't you? Another prosecutor who decided protecting the system was more important than. It's not that simple. Then make it simple. She was shouting now. Months of rage finally finding a target. Explain to me how my friend, my law school study partner, who used to talk about justice like it meant something, how that person became someone who lets violent cops walk free. Because I didn't have a choice. His voice cracked. Ayanna, you don't understand how it works. The pressure that comes down when you try to prosecute a cop. It's not just the police union. It's the mayor's office, the city council, the business community. Everyone who benefits from keeping things quiet, from maintaining the illusion that the system works. So you just gave in, just decided that was okay. I decided to survive. The words came out anguished. You want to know what happened the one time I actually tried to bring charges against an officer? The one time I thought I could make a difference? They destroyed me. Ayanna investigated my finances, my cases, my personal life. They found an old relationship with a witness from a different case, completely above board, completely after the case closed, and made it look like I'd been compromising investigations for years. I almost lost my license. Almost lost everything. Ayanna closed her eyes, feeling something crack inside her chest. So, you made a deal. I made a choice. To stay in the system, to try to do good where I could, rather than be thrown out completely. His voice dropped. I know that doesn't make it right. I know. But Ayanna, if I'd kept fighting, they would have destroyed me, and they would have replaced me with someone even worse. At least this way, I could. Could what bury a few less cases than your replacement might have? Offer people like me meaningless sympathy while you protect the system that's killing us. She laughed bitterly. That's not survival, Marcus. That's collaboration. That's not fair. Fair. The word tasted like poison. You want to talk about fair? My father lived in fear for 20 years because of what Bryant did to him. Died with that fear still locked in his chest. And you had the chance to stop Bryant, multiple chances, and you chose not to. So don't talk to me about fair. The silence stretched long enough that she thought he'd hung up. Then, you're right. His voice was barely a whisper. God help me, you're right. I told myself I was being pragmatic, strategic, that I was playing the long game, but the truth is I was scared, and I let that fear turn me into exactly what I used to fight against. Ayanna felt tears burning her eyes. Why are you telling me this now? Because watching you stand up, watching you refuse to back down, even when they threaten everything you love, it made me remember who I used to be. Before I got tired. Before I decided that survival was good enough. A shaky breath. I can't undo what I've done. Can't bring back the justice I failed to deliver. But I can help you now, if you'll let me. How? The question came out sharp. How can I trust anything you say after this? You can't, but I have something you need. More memos, more documents. Evidence of the protection network, not just in the DA's office, but in the police department, the court system, city council. Names, dates, case numbers. Everything I've collected over the years. Why would you collect that if you were part of it? Insurance. He laughed without humor. I told myself it was insurance. That if they ever came after me, I'd have leverage. But really, I think I was documenting my own shame, keeping a record of every time I failed to do the right thing. Ayanna was quiet, her mind racing. Could she trust him? Should she? But if what he said was true, if he really had documentation of the entire network, it could be the key to everything. Send it to me. All of it. I can't. Not digitally. They're monitoring everything, your email, your phone. Hell, they're probably listening to this call right now. Then how? Meet me. Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. before either of us is supposed to be at the courthouse. There's a coffee shop on Ponce Last Call Coffee. I'll bring hard copies of everything. Ayanna hesitated. It could be a trap. Could be Marcus leading her into whatever the next phase of the attack was. But it could also be real. Could be a man finally deciding his soul was worth more than his safety. 6 a.m. If you're not there, or if this is a setup. It's not. I swear to God, Ayanna. I'm done being afraid. After he hung up, Ayanna sat in the dark, trying to process everything. Her father's attacker was the same man who'd attacked her. Her trusted friend had been burying cases for years, and somewhere in the intersection of those betrayals was a truth larger and uglier than she'd imagined. The sky was starting to lighten when her phone rang again. Lena, her voice tight with fear. Judge, don't come to the courthouse today. Please. I shouldn't be calling, but I had to warn you. They're planning something. I heard Hayes on the phone with someone talking about serving you with suspension papers, effective immediately. And Judge, there are cops everywhere. Not regular court security. Like 20 extra officers. I think they're setting a trap, Ayanna finished. Planning to arrest me the moment I show up. On what charges? Does it matter? They'll figure something out? Obstruction, contempt, whatever sticks. She ran a hand over her face, her bruises still tender. Lena, I need you to get out of there. If they're coming after me, they'll come after anyone who helped me. Anyone who might have the footage. They know I leaked it. It wasn't a question. I don't know, but we have to assume they suspect. Can you call in sick? Get out of the building. I'm already outside. I came in early, heard Hayes's call, and left immediately. I'm scared, Judge. I'm really scared. I know, me too. But listen, you did the right thing. That footage is out there now. Millions of people have seen it. That matters. You made it matter. But if they arrest you, then the story gets bigger. Then more people pay attention. Ayanna tried to sound more confident than she felt. They think fear will break us. Let's prove them wrong. The hours until dawn crawled by with excruciating slowness. Ayanna showered, dressed in civilian clothes, no suit, no armor of professionalism. If they were going to come after her, she wouldn't give them the satisfaction of catching her trying to maintain dignity. She'd learned that lesson in the courtroom. Sometimes survival meant abandoning the pretense that the rules still applied. At 5:45 a.m., she left her house through the back door, using the neighbor's yard to reach her car. Paranoid maybe. But paranoia was just pattern recognition when people really were out to get you. The coffee shop was nearly empty when she arrived. Marcus sat in the back corner, looking like he'd aged 10 years overnight. Dark circles under his eyes. Hands wrapped around a coffee cup like it was the only thing keeping him tethered to earth. She slid into the seat across from him without preamble. Show me. He pushed a manila envelope across the table, thick, heavy with paper. It's all there. Memos, emails I printed before they locked me out of the system, copies of complaints that were suppressed. There's a pattern going back at least 15 years. Maybe longer. Ayanna opened the envelope, scanning the first few pages. Her stomach turned. It was worse than she'd imagined. Dozens of cases. Hundreds of complaints. A systematic, coordinated effort to protect violent officers not just from prosecution, but from any accountability at all. There are names here I recognize, she said quietly. Judges I've worked with, prosecutors I've argued in front of, city council members who campaign on reform. The system protects itself, Marcus said. That's what I learned. It doesn't matter if you're progressive or conservative, Democrat or Republican. Once you're inside, once you benefit from the way things are, you defend it. Even the good people, especially the good people, because they're the ones who can make the system look legitimate. You're in here too, Ayanna said, holding up a memo with his signature. Multiple times. I know. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Ayanna. I'm asking for a chance to help tear it down. To make the cowardice mean something by using what I know to expose everyone else who made the same choice I did. She studied his face, looking for deception. Found only exhaustion, and something that might have been hope. If we do this, if I use these documents, they'll destroy you. You know that. I'm already destroyed. I destroyed myself the first time I filed a case as no probable cause when I knew damn well there was cause. I just didn't have the courage to act on it. He leaned forward. But you do. You have the courage I lost. So use it. Use these documents. And when they come after me, and they will, I'll tell the truth. All of it. On record in public, wherever it matters most. Ayanna tucked the envelope into her bag. There's something else. Senator Patricia Moore called me last night. She's offering help investigators federal contacts protection. Marcus's eyebrows rose. Moore, I didn't know she was still active in this kind of thing. She has her own history with police corruption, her own regrets. Ayanna checked her watch. I'm meeting her this morning. Want to come? They'll be looking for me too, the moment I don't show up at the office. Then we'd better make today count. They left separately, Marcus through the front and Ayanna through the kitchen exit after slipping the staff $20. Meeting Senator Moore at her office felt risky, but Moore had suggested a better location, her private home in Buckhead, a place rarely monitored and easily secured. The house was elegant, but not ostentatious. Moore answered the door herself, a black woman in her 60s, with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. She studied Ayanna's bruised face for a long moment before speaking. You look like hell. I feel worse. Moore smiled sharp and knowing. Good. Means you're still feeling things. Come in, both of you. The living room was set up like a war room. Laptop stacks of files, a whiteboard covered in names and connections, drawn in multiple colors. Moore's investigators were already there, two serious-looking women who introduced themselves as Janice and Kira, former FBI agents now working private. Let's see what you've got, Moore said, settling into a chair like it was a throne. Ayanna and Marcus spread out the documents. For the next 2 hours, they went through everything, building a timeline, identifying key players, mapping connections. The scope was staggering. Prosecutors, judges, police supervisors, union lawyers, even journalists who consistently wrote favorable coverage of police despite evidence of wrongdoing. This is a protection racket, Janice said, studying the network map they'd created. Classic organized crime structure. Everyone has dirt on everyone else, so no one can break ranks without bringing the whole thing down. Except it's not organized crime, Kira added. It's organized law enforcement, which is so much worse because they have legal authority behind the corruption. Moore tapped a finger on one document, an email chain about Bryant specifically. This is our smoking gun. The DA's office, the police chief, and 2 city council members discussing how to handle complaints against Bryant. They use code words, but the meaning is clear. They're actively coordinating to protect him. Because of what he knows, Marcus said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. Bryant's not important because of who he is. He's important because of who he's protected. I've heard rumors for years Bryant does security work on the side for some very powerful people. Politicians, judges, business owners. Off-duty work that sometimes involves making problems disappear. Ayanna felt ice spread through her veins. You're saying he's an enforcer. I'm saying he knows where bodies are buried, maybe literally. And if he goes down, if he starts talking to save himself, a lot of powerful people go down with him. Moore leaned back, her expression grim. That explains why they're fighting so hard to protect him. This isn't about one bad cop. It's about an entire ecosystem of corruption that depends on men like Bryant staying quiet. So what do we do? Ayanna asked. We expose it. But how do we keep them from burying it again, from discrediting us before the truth can land? We make it too big to bury, Moore said. We don't just go to the local media. We go national, federal. We get the DOJ involved, get congressional hearings if we can. And most importantly, we get more victims to come forward. Bryant's not the only one. There are others in this network, other officers being protected. We find their victims, we document their stories, and we show this isn't isolated. It's systematic. That puts those victims at risk, Ayanna said. They're already at risk, Kira pointed out. They've been at risk since the day they were victimized. At least this way they have a chance at justice. Ayanna thought of Keisha Grant, of Marcus Davis, of her own father, who'd carried his trauma to the grave. How many others were out there suffering in silence, believing no one would listen? I'll reach out to the ones who contacted me, she said. See if they're willing to go on record. But we need protection for them, real protection. We can arrange that, Janice said. Safe House's security details the works. It'll be expensive, but I'll cover it, Moore interrupted. Whatever it costs. Consider it my penance. They spent the rest of the morning planning. Who to contact, what media outlets to approach, how to coordinate the release of information for maximum impact. By noon, Ayanna's phone was buzzing constantly, calls from the courthouse, from the chancellor's office, from numbers she didn't recognize. She ignored all of them. At 1:37 p.m., a breaking news alert lit up everyone's phones simultaneously. Warrant issued for Judge Ayanna Williams' arrest charges of obstruction and contempt. The room went silent. Ayanna read the article with a strange sense of detachment. They were charging her with obstruction for refusing to recuse herself for interfering with the investigation into Bryant's assault. Contempt for refusing lawful orders from superior court officials. It was absurd, transparent, but it didn't matter. The warrant was real, and if she was arrested, she'd disappear into the system she'd spent years serving. Would be held without bail, isolated, cut off from the very fight she'd started. They're forcing your hand, Moore said. Arrest you now, control the narrative, make it look like you're the criminal. Then we move faster, Marcus said. We release everything tonight, before they can take you into custody. Flood the zone with so much truth they can't spin their way out. If I run from this warrant, I'm admitting guilt in the eyes of a lot of people, Ayanna said. And if you surrender, you're letting them silence you, Moore countered. Judge Williams, this is chess, not checkers. Sometimes you have to sacrifice a piece to win the game. Ayanna looked at the warrant again. At her name next to the word criminal. At the system she'd believed in calling her the threat. She thought of her father beaten and broken. Thought of Zara photographed and threatened. Thought of every victim who'd tried to speak up and been crushed for it. Then let's win, she said. Within an hour, Moore's living room had transformed into a command center. Janice was on the phone with a producer at CNN. Kira was encrypting files for upload to multiple news organizations simultaneously. Marcus sat at the laptop, drafting a statement that would accompany the document dump. And Ayanna stood by the window watching the street for any sign of police cruisers, federal agents, anyone coming to execute that warrant. We need your victims on record, Moore said, appearing at her elbow. Recorded testimony, signed affidavits, anything that makes them real people instead of case numbers. Can you reach out? Ayanna pulled out her phone. The list of calls she'd received over the past 2 days. Keisha Grant, 3 others who'd shared their stories in voices shaking with fear and fury. She started with Keisha. The phone rang 4 times. Ayanna was about to hang up when a breathless voice answered. Judge Williams. Keisha, I know this is fast and I know you're scared, but I need to know, are you willing to go on record? Tell your story publicly. There are federal investigators involved now, major media outlets. This is real. This is happening. Silence. Long enough that Ayanna wondered if she'd asked too much, pushed too hard. Then, will it matter? Will anyone actually listen this time? I can't promise the outcome, but I can promise people will hear you, and you won't be alone. There are others. We're building a case not just against Bryant, but against everyone who protected him. Another pause. My mama told me not to do this. Said it'll only bring more trouble. But Judge, I watched you stand back up with blood on your face, and I thought if she can do that, maybe I can too. Then let's do it together. By 3 p.m., they had 4 victims ready to record testimony. Moore's investigators had set up a secure video recording system. One by one, the victims appeared on screen, faces haunted but determined, voices cracking with emotion as they recounted what Bryant had done, what the system had done by refusing to believe them. Keisha went first. She sat in her small apartment, the metal plates in her face visible when the light hit her at certain angles. She spoke slowly, carefully, as if each word cost her something. My name is Keisha Marie Grant. I'm 26 years old. 2 years ago, Officer Jonathan Bryant pulled me over for a broken taillight. I wasn't being difficult. I wasn't resisting. I did everything my daddy taught me, hands on the wheel. Yes, sir, no, sir, don't give them any reason. But it didn't matter. Her voice broke. He said I was being disrespectful. Said I had an attitude. He yanked me out of the car and slammed my face into the hood so hard I felt my cheekbone shatter. I remember thinking, this can't be real. This can't be happening. But it was. And when I tried to file a complaint, they investigated me instead. Treated me like I was the criminal for daring to say a cop hurt me. Marcus Davis came next, his mother sitting beside him. The 19-year-old spoke with a quiet intensity that made every word land like a hammer. I was walking home from work. That's it. That's all I was doing. Walking home after an 8-hour shift, flipping burgers, thinking about whether I had enough money for my college textbooks. Then Officer Bryant stopped me, said I matched the description of a robbery suspect. I'm 6'2", skinny, wearing a Wendy's uniform that smells like French fries. What robbery suspect looks like that? His jaw tightened. He put his hands on me before I could even ask what description, before I could show him my work badge. And when I tried to explain, tried to just talk, he hit me. Kept hitting me even after I was on the ground, even after the handcuffs were on. 7 times. I counted. My mama counted them on the video later. 7 times he hit me while I was restrained and helpless. Mrs. Davis spoke, then her voice carrying the weight of every mother who'd watched her child be brutalized. They called it resisting arrest. My baby, who works 2 jobs to pay for community college, who's never been in trouble his whole life. They called him a threat. And when I went to that police station to ask why, they looked at me like I was stupid for not understanding, like this was just how things worked. The 3rd victim was a 53-year-old veteran named Gerald Thompson. His testimony was delivered from a wheelchair. He'd been left with permanent spinal damage from Bryant's actions during a traffic stop 3 years ago. I served 20 years in the Army, did 3 tours overseas. Came home thinking I'd be safe here, that the rights I fought for would protect me. But Officer Bryant didn't see a veteran. He saw a black man in a nice car and assumed I'd stolen it. When I reached for my registration like he asked, he said I was reaching for a weapon. Pulled me out, threw me to the ground. I heard my spine crack. His hands gripped the wheelchair arms. 3 years of surgeries. Lost my job. Lost my marriage because my wife couldn't handle being a caretaker. All because one cop saw a threat instead of a person. The 4th was a 38-year-old nurse named Simone Washington. She'd witnessed Bryant plant drugs on a suspect during a hospital arrest and had tried to report it. The retaliation had been swift and thorough. They audited my nursing credentials, claimed I'd made medication errors I never made, started an investigation into whether I'd been stealing from patients, me who's never taken a penny that wasn't mine. They tried to destroy my career because I saw what Bryant did and refused to stay quiet. Her voice hardened. But I'm still here, still nursing, and still telling the truth, even if it costs me everything else. Ayanna watched each testimony with tears streaming down her face. These were the casualties of a system built to protect power instead of people. These were the voices that had been systematically silenced, dismissed, erased. Not anymore. By 5 p.m., they had everything ready. Documents organized. Testimony recorded. Media outlets briefed and standing by. Moore had called in every favor she'd accumulated over 20 years in the Senate. Major networks were prepared to run simultaneous stories at 7 p.m., a coordinated exposure that would make it impossible for the story to be buried or spun. "This is it," Marcus said, his hand hovering over the send button. "Once we do this, there's no going back." "There was no going back the moment Bryant's fist connected with my face," Ayanna said. "We've been in freefall ever since. Might as well make the landing count." Marcus clicked send. The files uploaded to secure servers, then automatically forwarded to every news organization on their list. CNN, MSNBC, The New York Times, Washington Post, Atlanta Journal-Constitution, every local news station. Thousands of pages of documentation showing a protection network that had sheltered violent officers for over a decade. Names, dates, case numbers, internal memos with signatures from people who were supposed to uphold justice. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. Then Ayanna's phone started buzzing, then Marcus's, then Moore's. Every device in the room lighting up simultaneously as the story broke across every platform at once. CNN was first. Breaking massive document leak exposes police protection network in Atlanta federal judge at center of corruption probe. MSNBC followed seconds later. Judge who was assaulted by officer releases evidence of systemic cover-up. Prosecutors, police chiefs, city officials named. The New York Times went deeper. Documents reveal decade-long effort to shield violent officers' Atlanta case. Part of national pattern. Social media exploded. Justice Ayanna was trending worldwide within minutes, but now it was joined by Howard Bryant files and how to expose them. The victim testimonies were being shared thousands of times per minute. Keisha's face, Marcus Davis's story, Gerald Thompson's wheelchair, Simone Washington's determined voice, all of it spreading faster than any suppression effort could contain. Moore's phone rang. She answered, listened for a moment, then smiled grimly. That was DOJ. They're opening a full civil rights investigation, not just into Bryant, but into the entire department and DA's office, federal prosecutors, federal oversight, the works. How fast did they move on that? Kira asked, surprised. They've been waiting. Apparently, they've had suspicions for years, but never had enough evidence to justify the political cost of investigating an entire police department. We just handed them that evidence gift-wrapped. Ayanna felt something loosen in her chest. Not relief exactly, it was too soon for that. But maybe hope. Maybe the sense that for once the truth was moving faster than the lie. Then Marcus's phone buzzed with an incoming call. He glanced at the screen and went pale. It's ADA Wilkins, my boss. He looked at Ayanna. I have to answer this. If I don't, they'll know I'm avoiding them and... Answer it, Moore said. Put it on speaker. Marcus accepted the call, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. Wilkins. Where the hell are you? The ADA's voice was tight with rage. Do you have any idea what's happening? Every news outlet in the country is calling us about leaked documents that have your signature on them. Your memos. Please tell me you didn't. I did. Marcus cut him off. I leaked them. Me. Because I'm done being part of a system that protects criminals with badges while punishing victims for speaking up. Silence. Then, you just destroyed your career. You know that? My career's been dead for years. I just didn't have the courage to admit it. Marcus's voice strengthened. But I'm admitting it now. Every case I declined, every complaint I buried, every time I chose politics over justice, it's all in those documents. And I'm prepared to testify to all of it, under oath, on record, wherever it matters most. You're going to be disbarred, prosecuted. We'll throw everything at you. Then throw it. But it won't change what those documents prove. It won't make the truth go away. You self-righteous son of a... Wilkins caught himself. You think you're a hero, you're a traitor. To your office, to law enforcement, to what? Marcus interrupted. To the code that says we protect our own even when our own are monsters. Yeah, I'm a traitor to that. And I'm proud of it. The line went dead. Marcus set his phone down carefully, his hands shaking. Well, that's that. That's what courage looks like, Moore said quietly. 20 years too late for me, but right on time for you. They watched the news coverage escalate throughout the evening. The police chief called a press conference to denounce the leaks as politically motivated attacks on law enforcement. The mayor appeared on CNN to promise full transparency while carefully avoiding any admission of wrongdoing. The police union president went on Fox News to claim Ayanna was a radical activist judge with an anti-police agenda. But the documents didn't lie, and the victims' faces couldn't be dismissed. For every official trying to spin the narrative, there were 10 journalists digging deeper, 10 commentators demanding accountability, 10 citizens saying enough. At 8:47 p.m., Ayanna's phone rang. Shanice. Aya, are you watching the news? Are you safe? They're saying. I know what they're saying. I'm safe. I'm with Senator Moore. How's Zara? She's asking questions. I don't know how to answer. She saw your face on TV. Saw the footage of... Shanice's voice broke. Aya, she's 10 years old, and she's watching her mother be called a criminal by people who are supposed to be on the side of justice. How do I explain that? Ayanna closed her eyes, grief and guilt warring in her chest. Put her on the phone. Let me talk to her. A rustling sound. Then her daughter's voice, small and scared in a way that broke Ayanna's heart. Mommy. Hey baby, I'm here. Why are people saying bad things about you? You didn't do anything wrong. That police officer hit you. I saw it. Zara's voice cracked. Why are they lying? Ayanna felt tears sliding down her face. How did you explain systematic corruption to a 10-year-old? How did you tell your child that sometimes the world wasn't fair, wasn't anything like what they taught in civics class? Baby, sometimes when people do something wrong, they try to make it seem like the person calling them out is the real problem. They lie because the truth makes them look bad, and they have power, so their lies get heard louder than the truth. But that doesn't make the lies real. So you're not in trouble. You didn't do anything bad. I did what I thought was right. I stood up to someone who was hurting people. And some folks don't like that because it means they have to admit they've been letting the hurting happen. She wiped her eyes. Zara, I need you to be brave for me. Can you do that? I'm scared. The admission was barely a whisper. Me too. But being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing the right thing anyway. You taught me that. Remember last year when you stood up to that bully who was picking on the new kid? You were scared then too, but you did it anyway. That was different. That was just school. It's not different. It's exactly the same. Someone was being hurt. Someone needed to stand up. The only difference is the size of the playground. Ayanna's voice softened. I love you so much, baby. And I promise you we're going to be okay. This is hard right now, but we're going to get through it. When can I see you? Soon. As soon as it's safe. I promise. After she hung up, Ayanna sat in silence, her daughter's fear echoing in her ears. This was the cost. Not the frozen bank accounts, or the arrest warrant, or the threats to her own safety. This her child's innocence being stripped away, her trust in systems being shattered. That was the real price of fighting back. Second thoughts. Moore asked gently, reading her expression. Every thought is a second thought right now. But no, not about doing this. Only about whether I had the right to drag Zara into it. Ayanna looked at the senator. Did I have that right? I don't know. But I know that if no one stands up, if everyone chooses their own safety over the truth, then Zara grows up in a world where power is the only thing that matters, where justice is just a word we teach in school, but never practice in reality. More moved closer. You're teaching her something harder, but more important that doing right often costs something. That courage isn't free. Those are lessons that matter. At 10:23 p.m., a new development. The FBI announced that Officer Jonathan Bryant had been taken into federal custody. Not just for assaulting Ayanna, but on additional charges, civil rights violations, spanning multiple cases, conspiracy to deprive citizens of their constitutional rights, witness tampering, and obstruction of justice. The bail hearing was scheduled for the following morning. Federal Court. Judge Patricia Henderson presiding. Henderson's good, Moore said. Fair. Not part of the network. If anyone will hold Bryant without bail, it's her. Can I be there? Ayanna asked. Or will they arrest me the moment I show up? That warrant is local, not federal. Different jurisdictions. And with federal prosecutors now involved, the local charges look even more like retaliation than they already did. I'd bet they're scrambling right now to figure out how to quietly make that warrant disappear. But Ayanna wasn't willing to bet her freedom on it. She spent the night at Moore's house in a guest room that felt simultaneously too large and too small. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Bryant's fist coming toward her face, saw her daughter's scared expression, saw the faces of victims who'd trusted her with their truth. Sleep came in fragments, restless and haunted. At 6 a.m., Marcus arrived with coffee and news. Chancellor Hayes issued a statement overnight. He's temporarily stepping aside, while the Judicial Standards Commission investigates his handling of the Bryant situation. Translation: the heat got too hot, and he's trying to distance himself before he gets burned. Good, Ayanna said. He should burn. There's more. 3 city council members mentioned in the documents have resigned. 2 prosecutors in the DA's office are on administrative leave, and the police chief. Marcus smiled, sharp and satisfied. The police chief is holding a press conference at 9 to announce his retirement. Ayanna processed this. They're cutting loose anyone who might implicate them, sacrificing the visible players to protect whoever's really pulling strings. Probably, but it's still more accountability than we've seen in 20 years. And with federal investigators now involved, those people who are retiring, they're not getting away clean. DOJ doesn't play. At 9 a.m., they watched the bail hearing via live stream. The federal courthouse was packed, media everywhere. Protesters outside carrying signs that read, "Justice for Judge Williams," and "Hold killer cops accountable," and "Bryant must face trial." Bryant looked smaller somehow, standing before Judge Henderson in orange prison scrubs instead of his dress blues. His lawyer, still Mitchell Carver, though looking far less confident than he had in Ayanna's courtroom, argued for release. Your Honor, Officer Bryant has deep ties to the community. He's served honorably for 23 years. He has no prior criminal record. He's not a flight risk. He assaulted a sitting judge in open court. Judge Henderson interrupted, her voice dry. That suggests a rather profound disrespect for the judicial system. And the additional charges, multiple civil rights violations spanning years, paint a picture of someone who believed himself above the law. That doesn't inspire confidence in his willingness to comply with court orders. Your Honor, the allegations are supported by extensive documentation, victim testimony, and video evidence. Mr. Carver, I've reviewed the government's filing. The case against your client is substantial. And given the nature of the charges, the number of victims, and the fact that several of those victims have reported being threatened since this case went public, I'm deeply concerned about witness safety should Mr. Bryant be released. Carver tried several more arguments. None of them landed. Judge Henderson denied bail, ordering Bryant held in federal custody pending trial. As they led him out of the courtroom, Bryant looked directly at the camera. His expression was cold, calculating, and Ayanna swore she could read his thoughts. This isn't over. But he was wrong. It was over for him. The question was how many others would fall before the system finished protecting itself. The rest of the day was a blur of phone calls and interviews. Ayanna spoke with federal prosecutors, 2 sharp-eyed attorneys named Chen and Rodriguez who'd been assigned to build the case. She gave her statement, walked them through everything, answered questions until her voice was hoarse. At 4 p.m., as she was finishing up, Chen's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then looked up with an expression that sent chills down Ayanna's spine. "We just got a call. Another officer wants to turn state's evidence. Someone inside the department willing to testify about the protection network in exchange for immunity." "Who?" Ayanna asked. "Won't say until we have a deal in writing. But whoever it is, they claim to have documentation going back 15 years. Names, dates, payoffs, everything." The network was cracking. Not breaking yet, but cracking. And once one person flipped, others would follow. That was how these things worked. Everyone protecting everyone until suddenly, everyone was scrambling to save themselves. That evening, Ayanna finally returned home. The FBI had cleared the house, checked for surveillance devices, and stationed agents outside. It felt surreal walking back into her own space after everything that had happened. Like returning to a life that belonged to someone else. She found Zara's backpack still by the door where she'd left it 3 days ago. Homework half finished on the kitchen table. A note in Zara's handwriting. "Mom, I'm making spaghetti for dinner. Don't work too late. Love you." Ayanna stood in her kitchen holding that note and let herself break. All the fear and rage and grief she'd been holding back came pouring out in sobs that shook her entire body. She cried for her father who'd suffered in silence, for Keisha and Marcus Davis, and Gerald and Simone and everyone else Bryant had hurt, for her daughter who'd learned too young that the world wasn't fair, and she cried for herself, for the woman who'd believed the system could work if people just tried hard enough, for the judge who'd thought her robe was armor against injustice. That woman was gone, had died in the moment Bryant's fist connected with her face, but someone new had been born in her place. Someone harder. Someone who understood that justice wasn't given, it was taken, demanded, fought for with everything you had, and then some. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Trial date set. Bryant faces federal court in 60 days. Are you ready?" Ayanna looked around her empty house, thought about her daughter who couldn't come home yet, thought about the warrant that still existed even if it was politically toxic now, thought about the network still out there, still protecting itself, still dangerous. She typed back, "Ready or not, it's happening. Let's finish this." The 60 days before trial moved like water through cupped hands, sometimes rushing, sometimes crawling, but always slipping away before Ayanna felt ready. The local warrant against her had been quietly dismissed after the national outcry made it politically impossible to maintain, but the damage lingered. Her bank accounts were unfrozen, but her savings had been depleted by legal fees and the month she couldn't work. Her position as judge was technically secure, but the Judicial Standards Commission's investigation hung over her like a sword waiting to drop. She'd finally brought Zara home after 2 weeks, but her daughter was different now, quieter, more watchful. She'd stopped talking about school like it was an adventure and started asking questions about why the world worked the way it did. 10 years old and already learning that fairness was something you fought for, not something you got. The night before the trial, Ayanna couldn't sleep. She sat in her kitchen at 2 a.m. reading through her own testimony one more time when her phone lit up with a call from Marcus. "You're awake too," she said by way of greeting. "Can't stop thinking about tomorrow. Today, I guess. It's after midnight." He sounded exhausted. "Ayanna, I've been meaning to ask, are you okay? Really okay?" She thought about lying. Thought about giving him the strong, confident answer he probably needed to hear. But Marcus had put his own career on the line for this. He deserved honesty. "No, I'm terrified. Terrified they'll find some way to let him walk. Terrified that even if he's convicted, nothing will really change. Terrified that I've put Zara through all this for nothing." Her voice dropped. "And I'm angry. At myself for being scared. At the system for making me this way. At everyone who had the power to stop Bryant years ago and chose not to." That's a lot to carry into a courtroom. "Yeah, but it's what I've got." She paused. "What about you? How are you holding up? I'm disbarred as of last week. Official notice came through. 27 complaints filed by prosecutors, defense attorneys, even judges I used to work with. They're calling me a turncoat, a liar, saying I fabricated evidence to save my own skin. He laughed without humor. The irony is, the evidence I provided is holding up perfectly. Federal investigators verified every document, but that doesn't matter. I'm still the traitor. I'm sorry, Marcus. I know what you gave up for this. Don't be. I should have done it years ago. Should have done it the first time I buried a complaint and felt sick about it. At least now I can look at myself in the mirror. He was quiet for a moment. Ayanna, whatever happens tomorrow, thank you. For having the courage I couldn't find. For standing back up when it would have been easier to stay down. We're standing together now. That's what matters. After they hung up, Ayanna walked upstairs and stood in Zara's doorway. Her daughter was asleep, curls spread across the pillow, one hand clutching the stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was 3. So young, so vulnerable. And Ayanna had pulled her into a war she never asked to fight. But maybe Ayanna thought that was the point. Every generation inherited the battles the previous one couldn't finish. And the choice wasn't whether to fight. The fight came whether you wanted it or not. The choice was whether to teach your children to stand or to hide. The federal courthouse in downtown Atlanta was surrounded by barriers and security when Ayanna arrived at 7 a.m. Protesters lined both sides of the street, those supporting her on one side, those supporting Bryant on the other. The noise was deafening. Signs and chants and cameras everywhere capturing every face, every moment. Senator Moore was waiting inside along with Janice and Kira. They'd become Ayanna's unofficial security team, making sure she got in and out safely. Marcus arrived minutes later looking pale, but determined. The prosecutor's office just informed me, he said quietly. The officer who flipped its deputy chief Warren Michaels. He's testifying this afternoon. Ayanna felt her stomach drop. The deputy chief who'd sat in her courtroom that day watching Bryant attack her with an unreadable expression. The one who'd tried to call it a misunderstanding. He was turning on the entire department. Why would he flip? Because federal investigators found evidence he took payoffs to suppress investigations. Apparently, he's looking at 20 years minimum unless he cooperates. And cooperating means burning everyone above and below him. Marcus's expression was grim. This is bigger than we thought, Ayanna. Way bigger. The courtroom was packed when Judge Patricia Henderson took the bench at 9 a.m. sharp. She was a no-nonsense black woman in her 50s who'd made her reputation prosecuting organized crime before being appointed to the federal bench. If anyone could handle a case this explosive, it was her. Bryant sat at the defense table in a suit, instead of prison orange, but his hands were still cuffed. He looked thinner than he had weeks ago, the confidence that had defined him, replaced by something harder to read. Fear, maybe. Or calculation. The prosecution opened strong. Assistant U.S. Attorney Chen laid out the case with surgical precision: years of abuse, a pattern of violence, a system that had protected Bryant at every turn. She showed the courtroom footage of the attack on Ayanna, showed medical records from victim after victim, showed the internal memos where prosecutors and supervisors had discussed how to handle complaints against Bryant. This isn't a story about one bad officer, Chen said, her voice carrying to every corner of the courtroom. This is a story about institutional failure, about a system that valued its own reputation over the lives and rights of the citizens it was sworn to protect. Officer Bryant didn't act alone. He acted with the knowledge, the encouragement, and the protection of people who should have stopped him. Then came the victims. Keisha Grant took the stand first, her voice shaking but clear as she recounted Bryant pulling her from her car, slamming her face into the hood, shattering her cheekbone while she begged him to stop. The jury. 8 women, 4 men diverse in age and race, listened with expressions that grew darker with each word. Marcus Davis followed, describing the walk home that turned into a nightmare. the fists that kept coming even after he was handcuffed and helpless. His mother sat in the gallery, tears streaming silently down her face. Gerald Thompson wheeled himself to the stand, his testimony about being paralyzed during a routine traffic stop delivered with the calm of a man who'd made peace with injustice, but refused to accept it. Simone Washington's testimony about witnessing Bryant plant evidence about the retaliation that followed, about losing everything for telling the truth, it landed like a bomb in the silent courtroom. Then it was Ayanna's turn. She walked to the stand, feeling every eye on her. The bruises had faded, but the scar was still visible, a thin white line across her cheekbone, where the butterfly stitches had been. A permanent reminder. Chen approached gently. "Judge Williams, can you describe what happened on the morning of September 12th? Ayanna took a breath and began. She kept her voice steady, professional, recounting the hearing, Bryant's escalating aggression, his refusal to follow court procedure. And then, the moment everything changed. He charged at me. I had maybe 1 second to process what was happening before his fist connected with my face. I remember the sound more than anything else, this wet crack. And then pain, overwhelming pain. I fell backward, hit my head on the wood paneling behind the bench. Her hand unconsciously touched the scar. When I opened my eyes, there was blood everywhere. On my robe, on the bench, dripping onto the floor. And everyone was screaming. What did you do? I stood up. The words came out simple, but the courtroom felt the weight of them. I pulled myself up because I knew that if I stayed down, if I let fear win in that moment, then everything I'd fought for, everything my father had suffered for, everything that bench was supposed to represent, would be meaningless. Your father, Chen prompted gently. My father, Marcus Williams, was arrested by Officer Bryant in 1998. He was beaten so badly he spent 3 days in the hospital. The charges were dropped, but the damage was done. He lived with that fear for the rest of his life. Died with it, still locked in his chest. Ayanna's voice cracked. When I saw Bryant's name on that arrest report, when I realized the man who'd just attacked me was the same man who'd broken my father 23 years ago, I understood this wasn't about me. This was about decades of violence that no one stopped because stopping it would have been inconvenient. Carver's cross-examination was aggressive but ineffective. He tried to paint Ayanna as biased, as having provoked Bryant with her remarks about race and police conduct. But every question he asked just gave her another opportunity to calmly reiterate what had happened. Judge Williams, isn't it true that you told Officer Bryant he didn't know what he was talking about? I told him his account of events didn't match the video evidence. That's not provocation. That's judicial duty. You questioned his credibility in front of the entire courtroom. Yes, because the evidence showed he was lying. Police officers aren't exempt from accountability just because it's uncomfortable to call them out. Your Honor. Carver turned to Judge Henderson. Frustration evident. The witness is being argumentative. The witness is answering your questions, Henderson said dryly. If you don't like the answers, ask better questions. That afternoon, Deputy Chief Warren Michaels took the stand. The man who'd sat silently while Bryant attacked a judge, who'd tried to call it a misunderstanding, who'd been part of the protection network for over a decade. Now he sat in the witness box looking 20 years older, his hands shaking slightly as he was sworn in. Prosecutor Rodriguez approached him like a hunter approaching wounded prey. Chief Michaels, how long have you been aware of Officer Bryant's pattern of excessive force? Michaels swallowed hard. At least 12 years, maybe longer. And in those 12 years, how many complaints were filed against Officer Bryant that crossed your desk? 47 that I'm aware of. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. 47 complaints, and Bryant had faced 0 consequences. What happened to those complaints, Chief Michaels? Most were dismissed. Some were settled quietly with payments from the city's insurance fund. A few resulted in token discipline, written warnings, brief suspensions with pay. Nothing that would actually stop the behavior. Why weren't they properly investigated? Michaels looked down at his hands. Because we were told not to. By whom? By my superiors. By the chief at the time. By prosecutors who said convicting cops was bad for morale and made their jobs harder. By city council members who didn't want the negative publicity. His voice dropped. By everyone who benefited from maintaining the appearance that everything was fine. Were you aware that Officer Bryant was providing security services for certain influential individuals in the city? Yes. And were you aware that some of those individuals included sitting judges, prosecutors, and elected officials? Yes. The word came out barely above a whisper. Did that influence how complaints against Bryant were handled? Michaels finally looked up, and Ayanna saw something break behind his eyes. The last defense crumbling. Yes, we couldn't touch Bryant because he knew too much. He'd provided security for people who didn't want their activities made public. He'd witnessed things that would destroy careers if he talked. So we protected him. Not because he was a good cop or because the complaints were false, but because letting him operate freely was easier than dealing with what would happen if we stopped him. The courtroom exploded. Judge Henderson's gavel came down hard, demanding order, but the damage was done. The truth was out there now, spoken under oath by someone who'd been at the center of it all. Rodriguez pressed forward. Chief Michaels, are you aware of Officer Bryant's attack on Judge Williams? I was present in the courtroom when it happened. And what did you do? Nothing. The admission hung in the air. I sat there and watched him punch a sitting judge in the face, and my first thought wasn't, how do we arrest him, but how do we control this? How do we make it go away, minimize the damage, protect the department? He looked directly at Ayanna. I'm sorry. That's not enough, I know, but I'm sorry. Ayanna felt tears burning her eyes, but refused to let them fall. Not here. Not now. The next witness was the officer who'd flipped Detective Sarah Chen from Internal Affairs, the same woman who'd questioned Ayanna like she was the suspect. Apparently, federal investigators had offered her a deal after finding evidence she'd deliberately buried investigations. Her testimony was technical, but damning. File numbers, case numbers, dates, and names of every complaint that had been lost or mishandled. A systematic dismantling of the protection network, piece by piece, name by name. As the afternoon wore on, as witness after witness exposed the rot, Ayanna watched Bryant. He sat stone still, his lawyer occasionally whispering in his ear, but his expression never changed. Until Michael testified about the influential people Bryant had worked for. Then something flickered, panic maybe, or calculation. The prosecution rested at 4:37 p.m. The defense's case was thin character witnesses who claimed Bryant was a good officer, that the complaints were from criminals trying to avoid responsibility, that the whole thing was being blown out of proportion by activists with an agenda. But the testimony that had come before was too overwhelming, too specific, too documented. On the third day of trial, something unexpected happened. Bryant's lawyer requested a sidebar with the judge. The whispered conversation lasted 10 minutes. When they returned, Carver looked like he'd aged a decade. Your Honor, he said heavily, my client wishes to make a statement. Judge Henderson's eyebrows rose. You're not calling him as a witness. He wishes to address the court directly before the case goes to the jury. This was unusual, highly unusual. Defendants almost never spoke during trial unless testifying formally. But Henderson allowed it. Bryant stood, his cuffed hands resting on the defense table. For a long moment, he just looked at the jury, then at Ayanna, then at the packed gallery. I did what they told me to do. His voice was rough, like he'd been screaming. Every single time, every complaint, every arrest, every time I used force, I did what they told me to do. The brass, the politicians, the people who run this city. His voice rose. They wanted officers like me, needed us. Someone had to do the dirty work, someone had to be the bad guy, so they could keep their hands clean. And when things went wrong, when people complained, they protected me, because if I went down, I'd take them all down with me. Mr. Bryant, Judge Henderson said sharply. "You should consult with your attorney before—" "I'm done consulting." He turned to face the jury fully. "You want to know why I hit Judge Williams? Because she was the first person in 23 years who looked at me and said no. Who told me the rules actually applied to me, and I couldn't handle it. Couldn't handle being told I wasn't above the law after years of being treated like I was untouchable." His expression twisted. "So yeah, I did it. I hit a judge in open court. And you know what my first thought was afterward? Not what have I done, but they'll fix this. They always fixed it before." He looked at Ayanna directly. "But you didn't let them fix it. You stood up with blood on your face and refused to play along. And that's when I really knew it was over. Not just for me, for all of us." Carver was on his feet. "Your Honor, I need to confer with my client." "Sit down, Mitchell," Bryant said tiredly. "I'm not stupid. I know this confession probably means you can't use any defense. But I'm done lying. I'm done being the fall guy while everyone else pretends they didn't know. If I'm going down, I'm taking them all with me." He turned back to the jury. "I've got names, dates, evidence of everyone who knew, who ordered, who benefited, and I'm going to give all of it to the federal prosecutors. Not because I'm brave or because I suddenly found my conscience, but because I'm tired. Tired of being the monster they needed and then pretended to be shocked by." Judge Henderson looked at both attorneys. "We're taking a recess. Council chambers. Now." The courtroom erupted as they left. Ayanna sat frozen, trying to process what had just happened. Bryant had essentially confessed on the stand, had promised to expose everyone above him, had, whether he intended it or not, just ensured that this case would spread far beyond one violent cop. Marcus grabbed her arm. "Did you hear that he's cooperating? He's going to give them everyone." "It won't bring back the years," Ayanna said quietly. "Won't undo the damage. But maybe it stops it from happening to the next person." When court reconvened, Bryant's lawyer had withdrawn from the case. A public defender was appointed to represent him going forward. The judge explained to the jury that Bryant's statement could not be used as evidence unless he chose to testify formally, which he was now declining to do. But the damage was done. The jury had heard him essentially confess. Closing arguments the next day were almost perfunctory. The evidence was overwhelming. Bryant's own words, even if technically stricken from the record, had sealed his fate. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, the forewoman, a middle-aged black woman who'd sat in the front row throughout the trial taking notes, stood to read the verdict. On the count of assault on a judicial officer, guilty. On the count of deprivation of rights under color of law, guilty. On the count of conspiracy to violate civil rights, guilty. On the count of witness tampering, guilty. On the count of obstruction of justice, guilty. Guilty, guilty, guilty. 8 more counts, 8 more guilty verdicts. The courtroom didn't erupt, didn't cheer. The silence was heavier than any celebration could have been, because everyone understood this wasn't a victory. This was just acknowledgement. Just one small correction in a system that had been broken for decades. Ayanna sat perfectly still, feeling nothing and everything simultaneously. Relief, grief, exhaustion, and underneath it all, a bone-deep awareness that this wasn't over. Bryant's conviction was one domino. The investigation he'd promised would topple more, but there would always be others. Always another person willing to abuse power, another system ready to protect them. Sentencing came 3 weeks later. Judge Henderson, her face grave, addressed the packed courtroom. "Officer Jonathan Bryant, you have been convicted of multiple felonies committed while sworn to protect and serve. You used your badge not as a symbol of justice, but as a license to terrorize. You victimized the vulnerable knowing they lacked the power to hold you accountable. And when finally confronted by someone who could judge Ayanna Williams, you responded with violence that was captured by the entire nation." Bryant stood motionless, his face blank. "Your cooperation with federal investigators has been noted, and it will be considered. But it does not erase 23 years of systematic brutality. It does not heal the physical and psychological wounds you inflicted. And it does not absolve you of responsibility for perpetuating a culture of corruption and abuse. Henderson looked at Ayanna. Judge Williams demonstrated remarkable courage in the face of violence and intimidation. She stood when it would have been easier to stay down. She spoke when it would have been safer to stay silent. And she refused to let this system protect you at the expense of justice. Then turning back to Bryant. It is the judgment of this court that you be sentenced to 15 years in federal prison on the assault charge, with additional consecutive sentences on the civil rights violations, totaling an additional 8 years. You will serve a minimum of 23 years before being eligible for parole. In that time, I hope you come to understand the harm you've caused and the trust you've violated. The gavel came down. 23 years. 1 year for every year he'd been a cop. 1 year for every year since he'd beaten Ayanna's father. There was no applause, no cheering, just the sound of Bryant being led away in chains and the collective exhale of a room full of people who'd been holding their breath for too long. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Ayanna. Microphones and cameras and questions shouted all at once. She stood on the steps, Marcus and Senator Moore flanking her, and waited for the noise to die down. Judge Williams, how do you feel about the verdict? Justice, she said simply. Not revenge, not celebration, just justice. Officer Bryant will be held accountable for his actions. That's what the system is supposed to do. It shouldn't take a national outcry for that to happen, but here we are. What about the ongoing investigation into the protection network? That's not my fight anymore. The federal prosecutors have it now. My only hope is that everyone who enabled Bryant's behavior, everyone who knew and did nothing, everyone who actively protected him faces the same accountability. Because Bryant didn't act alone. He never could have. Do you have any message for his other victims? Ayanna looked directly into the cameras. I'm sorry it took so long. I'm sorry you weren't believed. I'm sorry the system failed you. But I pray that this verdict shows you that speaking up matters, that your voices matter, that the truth, even when it's inconvenient and painful, is worth fighting for. Will you return to the bench? I don't know yet. The Judicial Standards Commission still has their investigation pending. But whether I'm a judge or not, I'll keep fighting for the kind of justice system we tell ourselves. We have one that actually protects everyone, not just the powerful. She declined further questions and left exhausted in ways that had nothing to do with physical tiredness. That evening, Ayanna finally sat down with Zara. Really sat down, not just brief moments stolen between chaos. They ordered pizza and sat on the couch, and for the first time in weeks, things felt almost normal. Did we win? Zara asked, her voice small. Ayanna pulled her daughter close. That's a complicated question, baby. The bad cop is going to prison. That's good. But a lot of people got hurt along the way. And there are still bad cops out there, still systems that protect them. So did we win? I don't know. But we stood up. We fought back. And that matters. You're always saying the truth matters, that doing the right thing matters. But Mom? Zara looked up with eyes too old for her face. Does it really? Because it looks like the truth just makes people mad? Makes them hurt you? Ayanna felt her heart break a little. Yes, baby. It really does matter. Not because it makes things easy or safe, but because a world where we stop telling the truth, where we stop fighting for what's right because it's hard, that's not a world worth living in. You understand? I think so. Zara was quiet for a moment. Are you going to keep being a judge? I don't know. The investigation might decide that for me. But whether I'm a judge or not, I'm still going to fight for justice. Just might look different than it did before. Can I help? Ayanna pulled back to look at her daughter. What? Can I help when I'm older, I mean? Can I fight too? Zara's expression was fierce. Because I don't want other kids to watch their moms get hurt for doing the right thing. I don't want people to be scared to tell the truth. Tears slid down Ayanna's face. Oh, baby. Yes, When you're older, you can fight too. But right now, I just need you to be 10. To do your homework and play basketball and be a kid. Can you do that for me?" Zara nodded, and they sat together in the quiet evening light, mother and daughter. Two people learning what courage costs and why it matters anyway. 2 months later, the Judicial Standards Commission closed their investigation with a formal reprimand for Ayanna's use of inflammatory language during the original hearing. It was political theater, everyone knew it, including the commission members who issued it. But it allowed them to claim they'd done something while avoiding the much harder question of why no one had stopped Bryant years earlier. Ayanna accepted it without comment and returned to the bench, not because the system had earned her trust back, but because stepping away would mean letting them win. And she'd come too far, sacrificed too much to give them that satisfaction. Marcus found work at a nonprofit legal clinic representing victims of police violence. The disbarment had closed one door, but it had opened another. He seemed lighter somehow, despite having lost everything he'd worked for. Like the weight of complicity had been heavier than he'd realized until it was gone. Senator Moore introduced federal legislation requiring independent oversight of police misconduct investigations. It wouldn't pass. Not this session, probably not the next, but she kept fighting anyway. Kept using her platform to expose corruption wherever she found it. And Bryant kept his promise. Named names, provided evidence. The federal investigation exploded outward, touching dozens of officials, revealing connections that went deeper and wider than anyone had imagined. Prosecutions were still ongoing. Would be for years. Some would call it justice finally being served. Ayanna called it a beginning. 6 months after the trial, Ayanna stood in her courtroom, the same courtroom where Bryant had attacked her preparing for the morning docket. Lena brought her coffee and a schedule. Full house today, Judge. 2 arraignments of sentencing, and that motion hearing in the Davidson case. The Davidson case. Ayanna flipped through the file. Police misconduct suit. Excessive force during a traffic stop. The officer had 15 prior complaints, all dismissed or buried. Let me guess. The department wants it thrown out on qualified immunity. Yep. And the attorney representing the officer is Mitchell Carver. Of course it was. The machine kept turning. New cases, same patterns, different faces, but this time would be different. Because Ayanna was different. Because the victims had seen that speaking up could matter. Because the networks protecting corruption were being dismantled piece by piece, case by case. It would take time. Would take more courage than any one person should have to muster. Would cost things she couldn't yet imagine. But she'd learned something in that moment when Bryant's fist connected with her face and she'd stood back up anyway. She'd learned that justice didn't come from the system. It came from people who refused to let the system break them. From mothers who taught their daughters to stand. From prosecutors who finally found their conscience. From senators who turned old regrets into new fights. Justice came from the blood and tears and stubborn refusal to accept that power always wins. As the courtroom filled and the bailiff called everyone to order, Ayanna took her seat behind the bench. The scar on her face caught the morning light, a permanent reminder of the cost of standing up, but also of the strength it took to stay standing. The Davidson case was called. The officer's attorney stood to make his motion. And Ayanna looked at him with eyes that had seen too much to accept easy lies anymore. "Mr. Carver," she said, her voice steady. "Before you begin, I want to make something very clear. This is my courtroom. In here, badges don't grant immunity from accountability. In here, power doesn't equal right. In here, we follow the evidence wherever it leads, no matter who it implicates. Do you understand?" Carver's expression tightened. "Your Honor, with all due respect." "I don't want your respect, Mr. Carver. I want your compliance with the law. Now make your motion, and we'll see if it has merit, or if it's just another attempt to protect someone who shouldn't be protected." She saw it then, the flicker of recognition in his eyes. The understanding that the rules had changed. That there was at least one courtroom in Atlanta where the old playbook wouldn't work anymore. It wasn't enough. One courtroom, one judge couldn't change a system this broken. But it was something. A crack in the foundation. A light in the darkness. That evening, Ayanna drove home through the city she'd fought for past neighborhoods that didn't trust the police because they'd learned through bitter experience not to. Past courthouse steps where protesters still gathered demanding accountability. Past the hospital where her father had been treated 23 years ago after Bryant had beaten him. When she got home, Zara was waiting with dinner started and homework spread across the kitchen table. "How was court?" her daughter asked. "Hard, good, important." Ayanna hung up her keys. "Same as yesterday. Same as it'll be tomorrow." "Did you make a difference?" Ayanna thought about the Davidson case, about the way Carver had faltered when she'd called out his tactics, about the victim's face when she'd ruled the case could proceed to discovery instead of being dismissed. Maybe. A small one. But yes, I think so. Zara smiled the same fierce smile she'd had when she'd asked if she could help fight. "Good, because Mom Justice doesn't have to be blind. It just has to open its eyes." Ayanna stopped staring at her daughter. "What did you say?" "Justice doesn't have to be blind. It just has to open its eyes. I wrote it for my civics essay. Mr. Patterson gave me an A." Zara grinned. "I was writing about you. About everything that happened. He said it was the best essay he'd read in 20 years. Ayanna felt tears burning, but this time she let them fall. Her daughter had taken the worst moment of their lives and turned it into words that mattered. Had learned not just to survive injustice, but to fight it. That night, after Zara was asleep, Ayanna stood in her kitchen, holding the essay her daughter had written. It was 5 pages of careful handwriting describing the attack, the trial, the verdict. Describing a system that had failed, and one woman's refusal to accept that failure as permanent. On the last page, Zara had written, "My mom says justice isn't revenge. It's when the truth doesn't have to whisper anymore. When people can speak up without being scared that no one will listen." She stood up when everyone else said to stay down. And that's what heroes do. Not because they're not scared, but because they're scared and they stand up anyway. Ayanna carefully folded the essay and put it in her desk drawer next to her father's arrest report and the photo of him in his hospital bed. 3 generations connected by violence and resistance, by the cost of speaking up and the impossibility of staying silent. She looked out the window at Atlanta's nighttime lights and thought about all the other cities, all the other courtrooms, all the other Bryants and Hales and Williams facing the same choices she'd faced. Stand or stay down. Speak or stay silent. Fight or surrender. It wasn't a choice at all, really. The next morning, Ayanna returned to her courtroom. Returned to the work of dispensing justice in a system still learning what justice meant. It was imperfect, incomplete, insufficient. But it was what she had. And she would use every ounce of it to make sure that the next victim, the next person who dared to stand up against power, wouldn't stand alone. Because that was the real victory. Not Bryant's conviction. Not the ongoing investigations or reforms or legislation. The victory was in proving that resistance was possible. That systems could be challenged. That truth, even when it was costly and dangerous and world-shattering, was worth fighting for. Justice hadn't won. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But for the first time in a long time, it had opened its eyes. And it was watching.